My name is Caroline, and this is my Grammar Top 10. The book examples that I have used for these sentence techniques are The Giver, a general dystopian book, The Selection, and Among the Hidden. The first example is an infinitive. This is an example of an infinitive. To say that America Singer is in love with Prince Maxon is arguable and questionable. An infinitive includes a to, following with a verb, and in this case, it is say. This is what makes up the infinitive. This is an example of an absolute. The Queen stood, her posture proper and rigid, and announced a law that not only restricted the citizens but angered them. An absolute starts with the pronoun, her. This pronoun refers back to the noun, the Queen. Following the pronoun can be descriptive details about the verb. So, her posture proper and rigid describes how the Queen stood. The absolute can be taken completely out of the sentence, and the sentence still makes sense. The Queen stood and announced a law that not only restricted the citizens but angered them. As you can see, the sentence still makes sense, and this is an absolute sentence. This is a positive sentence. Jonas, a brave and determined boy, sacrificed all that he had to do what was right for the community. And a positive describes the noun, so a brave and determined boy describes what Jonas is, and it also makes sense if it's taken out of the sentence. So Jonas sacrificed all that he had to do what was right for the community. This is an example of a gerund. Using the caste system was not a good way to create equality in America's country. A gerund needs to have an ing. The ing that I used in my gerund was using. The gerund can also be replaced with it. I've underlined the gerund. If we replace this with it was not a good way to create equality in America's country. This still makes sense, and this is a good trick to finding out if the gerund that you used is actually a gerund. This is an example of a simple sentence. Some characters in dystopian books have a great sense of determination. A simple sentence is just what it sounds like, simple. There aren't any need for commas or any complicated techniques. Simple sentences are important because it provides variety instead of lots of complicated techniques and also simple sentences tend to be straightforward and simple, so it kind of helps the reader understand. Though other sentence techniques can also help readers understand and get a bigger picture. But simple sentences provide a lot of variety. Or some variety. This is a compound sentence. Luke watches out the roof in his room, and he reads thick books about famous explorers during the morning. A compound sentence is made up of two independent clauses, which means that they can stand alone. So if I just use the first part of the sentence, Luke watches out the roof in his room, that makes sense, and that's an independent clause. So does the second. He reads thick books about famous explorers during the morning. These two independent clauses are connected by something that stands as fanboys. Fanboys stand for and nor, but, or, yet, so. These connect the two independent clauses and make up a compound sentence, and they can also be used in other sentence techniques. This is a complex sentence. Although America was a former 5, she ate 3 pancakes with bacon and eggs every morning for breakfast. A complex sentence is made up of an independent and dependent clause. The independent clause would be, she ate 3 pancakes with bacon and eggs every morning for breakfast, because it can stand alone and make sense. The dependent clause is, although America was a former 5. This does not make sense because when it stands alone, it's not a complete sentence. So, and it also depends on the independent clause to make sense, given the name of dependent. Dependent clauses also normally start with an awubis word, which is as, although, after, while, when, unless, because, before, if, since. I used although. And as I said before, Awubis words start dependent clauses. This is a compound complex sentence. When Luke visited Jen, Jen ate potato chips as part of her lunch, but Luke was used to eating bread and butter. A compound complex sentence can be composed of two independent clauses and a dependent clause. As you can see, the dependent clause is first, when Luke visited Jen. This doesn't make sense, and it depends on the independent clauses to make sense. Following this dependent clause are two independent clauses. Jen ate potato chips as part of her lunch, and Luke was used to eating bread and butter. These both make sense by themselves. These two independent clauses are connected by fanboys. In this case, I used but. Separating all three of the clauses is a comma. So there's a comma after when Luke visited Jen, the dependent clause, a comma after the first independent clause. Following that second comma is a fanboys, which is but, and then you'll find the last independent clause. This is a parallel sentence. Prince Maxon enjoyed free access to the ballrooms, dining halls, and beautiful gardens whenever he wished for it. A parallel sentence is a sentence that can be used to list certain things. In this sentence, I talk about multiple things that Prince Maxon has access to. The second to last thing that is listed is connected with a fanboys. I used and because it makes sense in the sentence. Commas are also important in this sentence because, in any parallel sentence, because the reader can then tell which things that are listed, whether they're together or separately listed. So ballrooms, comma, dining halls, comma, and beautiful gardens. And in other parallel sentences, if I were to take out the commas, some things would be confusing and the reader wouldn't know which words should be grouped together and which words should not be grouped together. This is an example of an absolute/infinitive sentence. To claim that the giver, his office full of intriguing books and a coat of costly silk, was poor would most likely be false. The sentence contains an absolute phrase, his office full of intriguing books and a coat of costly silk. This is an absolute phrase because his refers to the giver, and the office full of intriguing books and a coat of costly silk kind of proves why claiming that he would be poor would most likely be false. And the part that makes it, so that's the part that makes it absolute, this part. His office full of intriguing books and a coat of costly silk, like I said. And the part that makes it infinitive is to claim. This is an infinitive, like I said before, because it is a to followed by a verb. So you can make lots of pairs with sentence techniques, and this is just an example of one. And they're very good to use in writing because it gives a good variety in sentences. Instead of just using one technique, why not use two? Great job, you may have just learned something new. Thanks for watching.